welcome back to the part two of our series for C++ fundamentals for absolute beginners. So for this second part, we're going to be looking at variables. We're going to be looking at taking inputs from the user, printing to the terminal like we did in the last tutorial. We're also going to look at the data types, arithmetic operators, all kinds of operators in C++. So let's get straight into it. So what are variables? Variables are container for storing data. And what kind of data do we talk about when we talk about data in C++? On my code here, I already have some snippets dropped down to illustrate the kinds of data we have in C++. On line 8, we have data type of integer that if you see my comment here, it saves type of numbers. We have the float that saves decimal numbers, and we have the double. Now, the double versus the float is that the double saves larger number sets compared to the float. We have the char that saves a single character type. We have the boolean that saves either a true or false. Then we have the string type in C++ that is used for string text basically. So these are the data types we have in C++. And how do they work? You first of all declare the data type you want to use, being int, float, double as the case may be. Then you go ahead with the variable name. Now the variable name is what we talked about, that is a container for storing data. So now the data we want to store in for line 8 is 6. 6 is the data we want to store for line 8. For line 8, okay? So now we have declared the variable name called my number, my num for short, and we have assigned the value 6 of type integer. So this is the basic syntax of declaring the variable, assigning a value to that variable and printing it to the console. Now on the next slide, we're going to look at how to print to the console. We're going to basically use on line 16, as you can see, the cout statement, the cout keyword, sorry, followed by the lesser than sign, double, then the string we want to pass alongside the variable name. This is just for clarity. So when I run this, you will see cout int my num. The next case we have cout, which is the keyword to print to the terminal, float like that. So we have like that till all the values, all the variables are being printed out of the console. So this is how you can use the variable name in C++ to assign a value to that variable and print it to the console. It's a very simple logic. You only have to, just like I said before, pass in the keyword boolean, char as the case may be. Then you now pass in the variable name, then the value you want to pass, given the scenario you want to use. If you want to use for a a if you want to use for a data type of char, boolean, name, and string and value numbers as the case may be. Again, now let's look at the naming conventions. What are the naming rules for using a value, for using a variable in C++? So we have a few naming conventions. Let me just drop that in the terminal here. These are the rules for using a variable name in C++. Basically, in any programming language you find yourself using, but this cut across all programming languages. But we're talking about C++ for this tutorial series. So, variable names, which I refer to as names, can contain letters, digits, and underscores. Variable names must begin with a letter or an underscore. Variable names are case sensitive. So, if you're using an uppercase and you come back to use a lowercase, it's going to throw an error because they are very case sensitive. You cannot use a special character before a variable name, nor can you use a white space before a variable name. You must use the variable name without starting it with an underscore, without starting it with a white space or a character. When I talk about character, I'm talking about the exclamation mark, the hashtag key, the hash keyword, the percentage, and other characters like that. So we have reserved keywords in C++, like I showed you guys the cout, the int, and other data types I've showed you guys. These are reserved keywords in C++, meaning that you can't use them to print certain variable names. You can't use them to declare variable names in C++. That's the meaning of keywords. So now these reserved keywords prevent you from using them as variable names. So let's look at the next thing in C++ we'll be talking about for today. Let's look at constants and how we can use constants in C++. I'm just going to take this snippet of code here and drop it in our code. I'm going to clear this up and drop a constant exam. This is an example of the constant key. Now, how does the constant key work? The constant key works in such a way that we use this constant to make sure that on the declaration of this variable name, my num, no value can be passed into it after we have declared it on this line 7. What do I mean by that? On my line 8, you can see that I'm already having an error here. And if you can see, if I hover around the error, I'm seeing cannot assign a variable number to a constant qualified type, const int. So now, const keyword allows us to just make a variable name constant. We cannot change the value of that variable ever again because we have used the const keyword. If I go ahead and still run this in the console, I'm going to have an error. And the error just simply says that what? Let's scroll to here. You see the error here. We have error cannot assign a value num with const qualified what type. So that's basically the usage of const keyword in C++. Const keyword is just used to permanently assign a value to a variable and prevent any further allocation to that variable. So how would this be applicable in a code? Let's say I want to create an application and I want to make sure my application it works in a particular way. For instance, I'm using an hour system. I know that for every hour you have 60 minutes make up an hour. I can pass in this variable name and call it hour here and say, okay, hour is going to be equals to 60. So I'm sure that no matter what happens in my code will not change from the previous declaration here because of the const keyword. This is one way we can go about utilizing the const keyword in C++. So this is what const keyword avails you in C++. The next thing I want to be looking at is how to take in data from the user and print it back to the console. So on my next line of code here, I'm just going to uncomment this out. I'm having a declaration on line 7. Let me clean this up. I have on line 6 now, int x. Now I am declaring a variable of type what? Integer, and I'm not assigning any value to it. I've only declared a variable of type x here. Now I'm going to use the cout to print what I want the user to do. Now the cout tells the user type a number. Now how do I collect that number from the user? Now we have cin with the greater sign operator and passing in that variable name x. So cin allows me to take input from the user and utilize it in any way I want to use it as. So I have cin here and I'm passing what? X. X is going to be the storage of the value from the user, and I'm going to use that same value on line 9. I'm saying cout lesser than sign, your number is lesser than sign, x. This is how we can collect input from the user and print it back to the terminal as the case may be. Let me run this in the terminal and show you how it works. Now my code is building. I have type in a number like I expected from the user. I type in 45. Then when I shoot in enter, I get your number is 45. This is the simple syntax of passing in data from the user. So I've been able to show you guys how to print to the terminal, how to collect input from the user, the various data types allowed in C++, and how to print them to the console. Also, I showed you guys the const keyword and how we can use it in C++. The next thing I want to show you guys is just arithmetic operators, assignment operators, comparison operators, and logical operators. So what do I mean by these operators? Arithmetic operators are basically your plus, division, minus, multiplication, and the likes. That is your arithmetic operators. How do we use it in C++? Let me show you one example here. I'm going to clear this up. If I want to add two values together, I want to say x is equals to 5. And let's go for the next line. I want to use int again. Y is equals to, I'm going to change that soon. Your int is supposed to be of lowercase. Okay. Int y, let's use small letter y, is equals to 5. Now I want to use an arithmetic operator to add these two together. So I can have another variable here, sum, and sum is going to be the summation of x and y, x plus y. So now this plus here is an example of an arithmetic operator that allows me to what? Add two variable names together and print to the console. So I'm just going to use cout, and with the cout I'm going to use the lesser than sign and pass in sum. So when I run to the console, I should be seeing 10 in the terminal, showing me that I've been able to add x and y successfully. So when I run this, I'm supposed to close my line of code here. I run this to the console. I should be seeing 10, and voila, I have 10 in my terminal. So this is an example of arithmetic operators and how we can use them. Now, an example of assignment operators is just this equals to here we have on line 6. Assignment operators are like equals to, plus, equal to. Let me just drop this in the console so we can follow along. Now, assignment operators are the equal to, plus, equal to, minus, equal to, asterisk, equal to, and division equal to. How do they work? Now, for the equal to, like we have used here before, it just assigns a value to a variable. Then for the star and equal to, it just adds the value to the variable, or multiply as the case may be. The next operator I want us to be looking at here is a double equal to, the not equal to, greater than, less than, and so on. Now, how does the comparison operator work? It allows us to first of all check to see if two values are equal to the same value. I'm going to be using most of all these operators subsequently in this tutorial. I just want to explain them for this tutorial. Then in our next tutorial, we're going to be looking at how to use them properly. Now we have the not equal to. How does this work? It works by testing two values and checking if one value is not equal to the other value. And if it is not equal to the other value, perform a certain action. Now we have the less than and greater than sign. These are just simply how you would expect them in mathematics. It tests to see if a variable is greater than or less than another variable. Then we have the less than or equal to, as you expect it to be. It checks to see if a value it checks to see if a variable is less than or equal to the other variable we're testing for. We have the logical operator. The logical operator is just used to check if two conditions are met or two conditions are not met. So we have this and here, which is used to check if the two conditions are met before the action is going to be executed. And we have the or here, which is used with these two symbols to denote or. Is used to check if one of these conditions are met before the condition we want to execute is being executed. Then we have the not. The not transcribes your condition from true to false or false to true, as the case may be. These are the main operators available to C++ that we are going to be using. For the basic class, I'm not going to be talking about the bitwise operators. We're just going to talk about the arithmetic operator, the assignment operator, comparison, and logical. So these are the operators we have in C++. And in our next tutorials, I'm going to be showing you how we can properly utilize this operator. This is it for the basic fundamentals in these tutorials. We talked about, once again, how to declare data types and pass in values. We talked about how to print those data types. We talked about how to pass in user data from the terminal and how to use that data and print to the console. We talked about how to use the const keyword, and we talked about the various operators in C++. That's just the basic. We're going to go deep into our next class and look at switch statements. We're going to look at conditions. We're going to look at the while loop and the for loop. That gets our hand more deep into C++ and understanding the fundamentals of how we can use this loop and statements in C++. See you then. Cheers.